When you think of all the young stars in football that showed a lot of promise but failed to live up to the expectations, I have no doubt that the list could be quite long. However, among all the names of those who were expected to be great, everyone would probably agree that one stands above the others. Widely known as one of the most overhyped players ever, Freddy Adu could often be considered the greatest bust of all time. But for someone who was literally nicknamed the next Pele, what could have possibly happened to make things go so wrong? Hey guys, it's Raymar, and today we're gonna look at Freddy Adu, the most overhyped bust in football history. But real quick before we start, I noticed that 89% of you guys watching right now aren't actually subscribed. I recommend you click that subscribe and notification button right now, or I will find you. Now that you finally did, let's get started. I remember when I was 14 years old, it was my first year in high school, I was wanting to try out for the football/soccer team, and I had just gotten a second generation iPhone. However, by the time Freddy Adu was the very same age, he had made his professional debut in the MLS. Yeah, you heard that right, professional debut at 14 years old. Now, you might be asking, how in the world does a teenager going through puberty for the first time play for a professional soccer team? Well, to answer that question, we first have to go back to the origins of Freddy Adu. Some of you might not know this, but Freddy Adu was born in Ghana and spent his younger years there up until around 8 years old, where he would be well known to play against people who were up to 3 times his age, and sometimes even played with fully grown men. Freddy Adu and his family would be eligible to move to the United States after they were chosen in the green card lottery. And with that, Freddy would be noticed by a local coach in Maryland after seeing him play against and dominating kids who were several years older than him, until he finally received US citizenship and was immediately placed into the Under-14 US Olympic Development Program, where he would help the youth US squad beat out international youth squads from Europe like Lazio and Juventus during international tournaments, while also leading them in scoring and also being named the tournament MVP. The media began to take a very deep interest into the feats and development of the young American prodigy, continuously keeping up with his growth in any story they can get their hands on, which then just led to even more media attention. Sure, there might have been some standouts before here and there, but not a single one was ever hyped up by the media so much prior to Adu. When he turned 14 years old, that media attention and hype would absolutely explode into astronomical proportions. Freddy Adu, just on his second year as an official teenager, became the youngest ever in American history to sign a major league professional contract, after he was selected as the #1 overall pick of the 2005 MLS Super Draft, playing for DC United. Imagine signing a 14-year-old to play in a league full of grown men. And also, imagine actually holding a draft in football. The MLS is a pretty weird place, I tell you. Adu also became the youngest ever in American history to play a professional sport. Additionally, he would become the youngest to ever score a goal in the MLS by a long shot. His first season would see him scoring 5 goals and having 4 assists in 30 appearances, while also briefly being a starter. And hey, that's really not that bad at all for some 15-year-old kid playing against grown men, right? Yeah, if you think about it, that's absolutely insane. Many people thought Adu was too young to be playing against men, and needed time to develop both physically and mentally in order to improve his game. At around that time, Adu was given the opportunity to train with Manchester United for about 2 weeks, but ultimately couldn't play any games due to being unable to obtain a permit to stay longer. And while the US has never really been good at football or produced many world-class talents, they were, however, incredibly good with publicity and media coverage. And after the young Freddy Adu's training with Manchester United, they would absolutely hype the hell out of his name. They would basically put him in any commercial imaginable and get him as much media exposure as possible. Although there still wasn't enough merit to show what he could really be like as a player, there was even a campaign that forced the narrative of Freddy Adu being the next Pele, which had absolutely no fair claim at all. But hey, if the media keeps pushing that agenda, it has to be true, right? So that's exactly what they did. They even somehow managed to get him in a commercial with Pele himself. And I really wonder just exactly how much money did they have to pay Pele for him to do that commercial. In the US, Freddy Adu's name was known across the nation as the next great American athlete that could finally put the US on top of the footballing world. Even Nike would buy into the hype by signing the teenager on a $1 million brand deal, even though he hadn't really proved anything in his game yet. Which, you know what, I'm not even gonna hate on at all actually. Get that bag, Freddy. The media hype was so strong that it made European teams actually believe that Freddy Adu's football skills lived up to their narrative. So I guess that all that publicity actually worked well enough for Benfica to give him a chance and sign him to play in Europe. By then, Freddy Adu had only scored 21 goals and produced 11 assists in 135 appearances, which was not bad at all for the 18-year-old. However, when he got to Benfica, his lack of technicality and maturity development in some areas were exposed in the Portuguese Primeira Liga. He would eventually go on a loan to AS Monaco with an option to stay and play in the French league, but was eventually declined by the club. Although Adu was young, he had already been juggling from team to team, with no stable playing or developmental time, which is absolutely crucial for a young player. So there wasn't really a single team in Europe that wanted to keep him. He would have a total of 4 loans during his tenure with Benfica, which would also send him to the Greek Super League and the Turkish 2nd Division League, all with no real success. He would only play 17 matches for Benfica and score a total of 4 goals. But by the time he was 22, the club saw no real development in Adu, and he would eventually return to the MLS and play for the Philadelphia Union, where he'd have his best run with a club, scoring 10 goals and providing 3 assists in 40 matches. With this, Adu would try his luck back in Europe and train with teams in the 2nd and 3rd Division leagues, only to unfortunately never land a contract. By this time, Freddy Adu was 25 and nobody really saw that initial potential that he once displayed and that the media once blew completely out of proportion. Freddy Adu would bounce around team after team after only a couple to not even a single year of play. Up to now in his career, he's played for 14 different clubs in 14 years. Some of these clubs have very little to no information about him at all. In fact, he's the only footballer I've ever seen to not even have a goal tally on his Wikipedia page. And the most surprising thing to me is that he's still looking for a team to come and play for right now. As of the making of this video, it might surprise you since you probably haven't heard anything about him for a long time, but the man is still 31 years old and could still have a few years left in him. In all honesty, if Freddy Adu is ever watching this video, I just want to say that I'm not hating on him at all. In fact, I do hope he can find a team that will sign him and he can continue to play until he's happy and ready to retire. He's made a lot of money playing the game he loves and traveling all over the world doing so, which is a dream come true. Throughout his career, he scored a total of 33 goals and 19 assists in 241 appearances, which is 0.14 goals per game and 0.08 assists per game, surprisingly better than some players playing in the top 5 leagues in Europe. Perhaps Freddy, instead of being overhyped by the media and going on all these photo ops, commercials, and brand deals, he should have been kept more low-key and developed properly by the MLS. It just goes to show you how bad they are at managing talent and how the media can really over-exaggerate things sometimes. Who knows, if he had been developed the right way by his coaches, he would have been the greatest American player we've seen, as he truly did have so much talent as a teenager, being able to break through multiple defenders, had great touch, and was extremely skillful. But on the other side, he'll be one of those unforgettable names not only in American football, but in football history as well. But that's all from me today, guys. This video was made possible by Alaric Aguilar, Owen Torres, Louis, and the rest of my patrons over at Patreon. If you guys want to support the channel, check my Patreon link in the description below. Any support is greatly appreciated. Anyways, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe and turn those notifications on if you haven't already to see the best football documentaries on YouTube. Thank you guys for all the support, and I'll see you in the next one.